Usually the best time to fish mid-depth is in between the overlap of the seasons. So more often than not, we don't hit, they don't play in the tournament ever. It's hardly ever perfect. It's always in between something, it seems like. In between the spawn and, post-spawn, or it's post-spawn, it's in between summertime and springtime, or it's in that tough time of September. There's a lot of classics around here at that time, and that's when the fish are usually mid-depth, and it's kind of an in-between deal. I usually break down every season 3 times, early, middle, and late, and I'll kind of talk about that more as we go on. But usually the hardest way to find them, mid-depth, I think it's easier for me to find fish shallow and find fish ultra deep or super deep or whatever. And I think it's usually harder for me to find them mid-depth, but once you do find them, you usually have them to yourself, and they usually don't get found. And I think that's kind of a trend. It didn't used to be that way so much, but now that the graphs and electronics have gotten so good, a lot more people look out deep. And so this has kind of gone by the wayside and been forgotten about. That's the way I feel. There's always fish mid-depth, and honestly, that's usually where the majority of the active feeders are, it seems like, anytime we go somewhere. I've struggled a lot in the past, like I said earlier in my career, and I'd fish too shallow, fish too deep, and the fish would usually be in between. And that's just something that I've tried to work on, and I hope that maybe I can kind of help you guys with that too. And I think the next slide, it's going to be more examples and things that, yeah. So here we go. That's a bass from Guntersville. That's an 8-something, 8.5, I think. It was a big bass of the tournament. This was a springtime tournament. We went there in April, and the fish were done spawning for the most part. There's a lot of spawners left. This is the one that Skeet Reese won on a big swim bait. I believe this is a big swim bait. And those fish were in between. They're just kind of starting to chase shad, and he got on the shad spawn deal. But for the most part, most of the fish were just kind of hanging out there after they'd spawned on the first kind of piece of cover that was out. That fish was like in 7 foot of water, 8 foot of water, I think. And it was on a grass jig, and it was hanging around a little bit of hydrilla. There's a little bit of hydrilla and milfoil mixed in with each other, and it was a really good looking crispy grass, but there wasn't a lot of it. But it was just a little bitty spot off the side of a little hump, and that's a good example of that whole mid-depth approach carried me through that tournament. And I didn't know Guntersville that well, never been there before, but I knew that, when I looked at the lake, there wasn't a lot of super shallow cover, but there's a lot of cover in that 5 to 12 foot zone. That's where all the grass was and stuff, and I knew I didn't need to go, look out deep on ledges and stuff like that. So I just started there on that tournament, and I picked a zone of the lake and fished hard, and I ended up finding a lot of these little bitty places where these fish had come out to, and little post-spawn deals, and caught, fish doing that.
Bass University TV, an online video training course where you'll learn champion bass fishing techniques from pro anglers Pete Gluzek, Mike Iaconelli, and their talented special guests. Watch hours of video content on multiple topics at your own pace for a low monthly fee. Cancel at any time. Subscribe today.